Hello, my name is John Barclay, and I'm leading the guided meditations during the month of June. This is the third guided meditation at the Buddhist Library, and the first two were based on mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of the feelings. Today we move on to the practice of looking deeply, specifically looking at the Buddha's teachings on the 4 nutriments. So please sit in a comfortable position so that you can be relaxed, at ease, and undisturbed for the next 20 to 25 minutes. There will be an introduction to the meditation, followed by some guided phrases or couplets to follow with your in-breath and out-breath during the few minutes of silence between each couplet. Try to keep an open mind. Notice if you are prejudging or bringing a critical mind and thoughts to what you hear. This can prevent beneficial insights from revealing themselves. So try to be as though you are an empty cup and allow insight to arise naturally with a steady awareness of your breath and the words of the couplets. The introduction and the guided meditation should all be considered as one. So please sit comfortably, relax your body, let go of any tensions or thoughts, and enjoy this guided meditation on the 4 nutriments. Every day we feed our body and our mind with what we consume. Not only the foods we eat, but also what we consume through our senses. We consume what we see, hear, taste, smell, touch, and think, and also what we perceive through our senses and thoughts. If we are mindful, we can be aware of what we are consuming. If we reflect and look deeply into the items of our consumption, we may have the insight that certain items contribute to our well-being, while other items may contribute to our ill-being. Looking deeply helps us to discover both the roots and the fruits of our consumption. According to the Sutra on the 4 nutriments, there are 4 ways we consume. Edible foods is the first. The second is sense contacts. The third, our intentions or deep desires. And the fourth is consciousness. When we attend retreats, or days of mindfulness in our tradition, the Plum Village tradition, the first 10 or 15 minutes of eating is in silence. We're instructed to eat slowly, 1 spoonful at a time, chewing our food thoroughly, really experiencing the taste of the food that we are eating. We try to be fully present for the food and not distracted by a device, watching the news as we might at home, and we eat without being engaged in discussions with others. Just fully present for eating. The first time you practice a silent meal can be a powerful experience. However, if you develop a habit of being present with your food while you eat, this can become a very enjoyable and nourishing habit. A regular habit of eating in silence can also lead to looking deeply into understanding where our food comes from and how it's produced, and also the effect of our edible food consumption on other beings, and whether our consumption habits create harm for other beings and for the earth. So this is also a benefit of the practice of silent meals. If you have a chance, why not try it? The second nutriment is sense contacts. When our sense organs, our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, come in contact with sense objects such as forms, sounds, tastes, scents, and mental objects, the energy that we receive can be wholesome or unwholesome. Mindfulness tells us what kind of sense objects to avoid and those to foster, what films to watch, how much news to consume, what conversations to engage in, and what thoughts to nurture. The first two of the four nutriments are relatively easier to notice as they appear clearly in the forefront of our mind consciousness. The second two can lie deeper in our consciousness and affect our behaviours in more subtle ways and require a more patient and diligent practice. The third nutriment is intention or desire. It can be a deep-seated and fundamental force driving our thoughts, speech, and actions in a particular direction. One example would be that we may be driven by a deep desire to become the sort of person our parents wanted us to be. Rather than be content with who we truly are, we are continually striving to be someone else, someone else's idea. Or maybe we have a feeling that we are perfect and our idea of unworthiness is pushing us, often unconsciously, in various directions. Acceptance and loving kindness can be very helpful allies as we gently sit with and allow insight into intention or desire to slowly reveal itself. Can we discern those intentions and desires that are based in a mind of love and bring happiness to those around us? And can we distinguish between those intentions and desires that are based in craving that lead to suffering for ourselves and others? Consciousness is the fourth nutriment. Our mind contains all the objects of our attention that we see with our senses, and also more subtle objects that often lie deep in our consciousness. These more subtle objects can force us to speak and act in ways which at first we don't understand. Reflection and contemplation on how we have spoken and acted in certain situations during the day is a helpful habit in recognizing and seeing the roots of these more subtle forces. For instance, a useful habit I find is to spend a few minutes reviewing the events of the day just before bedtime. Why did I say that? What made me do that and act in that way? Was my speech kind and encouraging? Or did I react rather than respond? As we meditate on the 4 nutriments, we can slowly understand what we consume and continue to nourish the wholesome and cease nourishing the unwholesome. And now, looking deeply into the 4 nutriments, breathing in, I'm aware of the edible foods I consume every day. Breathing out, I see the effects of my consumption on myself and the universe around me. In breath, aware of edible foods I consume. Out breath, effect on self and others. Breathing in, aware of edible foods I consume. Breathing out, aware of the effect of the foods I consume on self and others. And now breathing in, again aware of the edible food I consume. I breathe in, determined to eat in a way that reduces the suffering of living beings. I breathe out. Edible food with my in-breath, reducing suffering with my out-breath. As I breathe in, aware of the edible foods I consume. And as I breathe out, determined to reduce harm and suffering to self and others. As I breathe in, I'm aware of the sense impressions that I consume every day. And as I breathe out, I'm determined to nourish wholesome sense contacts. With each in-breath, aware of sense impressions. With each out-breath, determined to nourish wholesome sense contacts. Breathing in, aware of sense impressions. Breathing out, nourishing wholesome sense contacts. Now, aware of the desires and intentions that I consume every day, I breathe in, determined to base my intentions in understanding and love. I breathe out, in-breath, aware of desires and intentions that drive me. Out-breath, determined to base intentions in understanding and love. aware of desires and intentions, basing desires and intentions on understanding and love. And now, aware of the more subtle objects of my attention that lie often deep in our consciousness, I breathe in, determined to reflect and contemplate on how I've spoken and acted in certain situations. I breathe out, aware of the subtle objects that often lie deep in my consciousness with my in-breath, reflecting and contemplating on my speech and actions. I breathe out. Aware of the subtle objects that lie deep in my consciousness. Breathing in, determined to be nourished by what is wholesome deep in my consciousness. I breathe out. Thank you for participating in this guided meditation. As we meditate on the 4 nutriments, we can slowly understand what we consume and continue to nourish the wholesome and cease nourishing the unwholesome. I look forward to being with you for the final guided meditation in June. Goodbye.